What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Go Talk with Marcus, powered by Poddex, fueled by Goat Fuel. We've been here every day, and we're gonna keep doing it throughout the course of the playoffs because that's what we do. Hardest working show in the game. I don't care what Blaine Spencer has to say because I'll just kick him off the show if he disagrees. Good guest here in Blaine Spencer of the Final Whistle Sports Podcast. As we get ready to talk about the Dallas Mavericks closing out the most overrated playoff team, I think, of the field this year in the Utah Jazz. What's up, Blaine? How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Marcus. I've been kind of following the Utah Jazz pretty much all year based off where I'm located. I think Marcus just finally realized that, I'm in Idaho. So,
Idaho.
So he's like crazy. So, I've been following the Jazz pretty much all season. And more than anything, they have just been an extreme disappointment. And it's really, you could see it from the Clippers series last year. And it's been the same bugaboo throughout this season into this postseason. They just haven't adjusted to anything. And we'll get more into that as we go through. But I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So for those of you guys that follow me, know that this is probably going to be 30-ish minutes of Utah Jazz slander. And if you're not down with that, in the great words of D-Generation X, suck it. No, it's fine. Before we get into the Jazz, though, let's talk about Dallas for a second, because Dallas, I think, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm over exaggerating. We do this sometimes, recency bias and things of that sort. You look at this roster construction outside of Luka Doncic, there's not a lot here that meets the eye, right? Obviously, you have Jalen Brunson, who's a big reason why the Mavericks were even still in this series before Luka returned, right? You have a guy in Spencer Dinwiddie who can give you a good game every now and then. You have Dorian Finney-Smith, who stepped up as well a little bit. Does this roster construction for this year in any way remind you of the 2011 championship roster that the Dallas Mavericks had with Dirk Nowitzki and Jason Terry and Jason Kidd and those boys? How similar, if at all, are these two rosters?
Well, I think you might be going outlandish with saying that they're pretty similar. I think you can see glimpses, right? You've seen glimpses. You can see the style of play is very reminiscent of how that 2011 squad did everything, right? Mm-hmm. Prided themselves on defense, tried to limit everything, and it was very clutch and selective shooting. But I don't think more than anything that it's more than just I know we're trying to talk Dallas here, but it was a really lot bad of Utah for them to even lose this series. But you can see glimpses, right? You have the one superstar, and it's an international superstar with Dirk, and then Luca here. Mm-hmm. You have the emergence of a Jalen Brunson, which was kind of reminiscent of how JJ Barea kind of bursted onto the scene on that 2011 squad, right? So Jalen Brunson made that critical components. Then you have some wing defenders like a Sean Marion on that 2011 squad, Dorian Finney-Smith, who can guard all five positions. So you can see glimpses, right? But I can't be overzealous like how you're trying.
I don't think there are similarities. It's a question. I just think it's something worth noting.
Well, are they going to win the championship? No. So there's that. So
I was really referring strictly to just the construction of the rosters, not necessarily title aspirations. This team pulls the rat out of the hat and knocks off the Phoenix Suns. Then we're talking about something that's really interesting brewing on our hands, much like we talked about with the Mavericks in 2011 knocking off the defending champion Lakers in the first round. Then we're talking about something really interesting. But no, they're a long shot for the championship. I just think outside of, if you take away the championship component of it, the rosters I think mirror each other. Unfortunately, though, that was a completely different era of basketball 11 years ago to now, where this is not going to be, I think, a recipe for success. You're going to need another guy for Luka. Props to Luka, though. Luka Doncic is, in my personal opinion, and I think it's universally accepted, but if it's not, I don't care. Luka Doncic is the best player in basketball under 25. I think the only other guy under 25 that has a legitimate argument to say he's probably better than Luka Doncic is Jason Tatum. That's because of what we saw him do in his first round series against the Brooklyn Nets. Outside of that, like Luka's better than Ja, he's better than Trey. He's better than some of these other guys, like your Cade Cunninghams and your Anthony Edwards and your LaMelo Balls. Like those two guys, Luka and JT, are the S class of talent under the age of 25 in the NBA. And I also think he's the second best point guard in the league, maybe third. But he's no lower than 3.
I have him second behind Chris Paul.
I also have him second behind. Well, I have him second behind Steph Curry. But Chris Paul's been doing great things in the playoffs.
Chris Paul is all right. I'm not going to talk Suns, but Chris Paul's the best point guard in basketball. It's not even close.
I can't get mad at you for that. That's not a crazy thing. I mean, when you watch a guy go 14 for 14 in a closeout game and drop 33 points and 8 assists, I mean, it's hard to deny it. He has like 40 assists and like
the point god,
5 turnovers. So God mode. But I'll save that for Justin Marvel because I'm sure he wants to do all the Suns ranting for that episode, and that's going to be a headache. And we need a Tylenol for that. But Luka and the Mavericks, though, this is their first. So this is Luka's first playoff series victory, which is great for him. But if we talk just specifically about Luka for a second, there's a lot of things I think that we forget about Luka and his greatness. And I think we throw that word around a lot sometimes, but Luka's great. If you look at Luka at this point in his career, he averages 32.7 points in the playoffs, which is second most all time, only behind Michael Jordan, who's at 33.4. That's more than Allen Iverson at 29.7. That's more than KD at 29.4. That's more than Jerry West at 29.1. That's more than who I think the greatest player of all time is, LeBron James, at 28.7. Like, he's also top 8 all time in assists per game. He's tied with Steve Nash in that regard for at least 15 career games. He's behind Magic and Stockton, John Wall, Oscar Robertson, and Isaiah Thomas. And then all-time three-point percentage leaders on at least 7 attempts per game. Obviously, the Splash Brothers are 1 and 2 with Clay and Steph, but he's right there at 38.7%, and he's ahead of Dame, who's at 36.9. Like, Luka Doncic, even though this is his first victory in the playoff series, and this is the Mavericks' first victory in the playoff series since they won that championship in 2011, Luka Doncic has already, I think, stamped himself as a premier playoff performer. And we have to remember, in 13 of the 16 games he's played in the playoffs, either Kawhi Leonard or Paul George have been the primary defender, and those are two of the elite two-way defenders in the NBA today. So Luka Doncic is 1,000%, I think, stamped himself as a legitimate playoff performer, and I don't think it's even close. Obviously, the success hasn't translated because he's been overmatched in a lot of these series. But this is great for Dallas. This is great for Luka. They're not going to win the championship. I don't want people that's listening or watching this to think that I wanted to draw that comparison because I think they're winning the championship, because they're not. I just think that the roster construction is similar, and they're both long shots. Yeah, and I concur with that, with all of those stats that you just laid out on Luka Doncic. The man is a flat-out superstar. I think he's a top 5 player in the NBA right now. I think that's pretty much no debate. But if you really want to debate it, like, I'll go toe to toe with that right now. But you can just, and he is so clutch, and you understand that he is going to make the correct play. He is that selfless superstar, right? Even though it's just him on this Dallas team. And you're right. If they really want to make a run at a title, they need another dude. And it's without question, they need a second consistent scorer to go with him for that success. But you can never phase Luka, right? He's always going to get to his spot. Yeah. He's always going to make the correct play. He plays in slow motion, and it doesn't bother. And it makes the defenders even worse because he's got that step back in his bag that he has improved on this year than he has from these last couple of years. That step back's gotten more consistent. He knows that his body built is going to impose himself on those smaller guards so he can work in the post. He's got all the tools, and he's selfless. Like, you can even watch in that game, he made that correct pass to help swing the ball for last night's like game leading play. And it just, Utah had no answers. I mean, they made no adjustments this whole series. And it's a little bit of a shame. Like, I think in game 4, when Luka returned, he looked vintage Luka, but I felt like that was the reason they lost the game, is that he came back.
because I think the Mavericks were rolling.
You could fare that, yeah.
You could make that argument that they were playing better without him because it made the team more unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
You knew that the ball was going to be more ball movement. It was very, honestly, Jason Kidd, it looked like it was very Warriors oriented, right? Like making that extra pass, always making the extra cut. And then when you bring Luka back, you're trying to make that adjustment. Jason Kidd has really had Luka embrace his coaching style as well as his point guard style of being a passer and a scorer. So I think absolute superstar. Kudos to the Mavs. Absolute abysmal from the Jazz, but.
And the one thing too for the Mavericks is it's really, you don't even need, because of how great Luka is. Like, Luka's been in the league for what, 3 years?
I think is this his year 4, I believe? Year 4? I don't think
he's been in the league for 3 or 4 years. He's been in his prime pretty much since he stepped foot in the NBA. Like,
and he's only like 23, 24 years old.
Because he played professionally overseas until
that has helped him translate at such a higher level than everyone else.
Right. So you don't even need that superstar talent, to be honest. Like, it doesn't have to be a Stephen Clay thing. It doesn't have to be a KD Kyrie thing. It doesn't have to be a LeBron AD thing. You can get a tier 2 guy to play along Luka Doncic, like a Kristaps Porzingis, but maybe a little bit more better, a little bit more reliable, and it works just fine. Like that. And if Kristaps Porzingis, I think if he produced more while he was in Dallas, he'd still be there 1. And they would 100% still be, and I think they would 100% be a title contending team because they'd have a big in a conference where there are no bigs outside of Nikola Jokic. So you put Luka with a big, a decent big, a big that knows what he's doing. Like, don't even have to be a guy that can score the ball that much. You put Luka with a guy like Clint Capella, who's a solid defender and is going to crash the boards, and he's going to keep you honest in the paint because he can go for 20 for 20. Like, someone like that, I think, is nice. They do have Maxi Kleber and Boban Marjanovic. Neither of those guys are really offensive threats. Neither of those guys are the most polished defensively. They're just big bodies down low. No shots at those guys, but that's not really the guy that you want down low in the paint to feed off of what Luka's got going on. Dream scenario, you put Luka and Nikola Jokic together, though. That's a team that wins a championship.
Easily. And honestly, just another point, Rope, before we keep going, but think about this. Dallas won this series, and arguably their best shooter is out in Tim Hardaway Jr. Their best pure shooter isn't even on the court, and they're winning this series. And Luka was out for the first 3 games. Like, kudos to Jason Kidd. That's a great coaching job. He just outclassed Quinn Snyder without easily.
100%. 100%. So I know I think we can both say it's a long shot. I don't think either of us have Luka and the Mavericks making it out of the second round. But if you had to give it a scale, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are the odds that you think that the Mavericks can get past the Suns in the Western Conference semis?
Okay, so my prediction is Suns in 6. So based off of that, I would go, what's that, 35-40% chance that they can get it done, right? Around there if it's going 6 games. And I think they have the same formula. It's going to be a real interesting piece of how everything goes, because I think you can attack Phoenix the same way you attacked Utah, right? They have the same issue. They have a shot blocker down low. He doesn't want to defend on the outside. Dallas loves to play small and spread the ball around. They look for open threes and try to combat that. Like in this Utah series, I think it was something ridiculous. They outscored Utah by 130 points from the 3-point line.
Yeah.
So they are a live and die by the 3 team when they go small. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how Phoenix combats that DeAndre Ayton scenario, because I think the issue with Utah, you have Gobert out there, but then Gobert is not punishing them on the other end of the court. If you're going to have him out there, he's got to be dominant in the post. And he wasn't that at all. So how does Monty Williams factor into that? Does he take Ayton out, or does he want to go and punish them on the other end through Ayton? So that'll be interesting to see how he uses that scenario. But I think the issue with Dallas is that Phoenix has easily 4 guys that they can throw at Luka, right?
Yeah.
So you have easily Mikal Bridges. I think he's going to be the one picking him up for most of the game. Then you're going to have Jay Crowder that can throw up, give him a little bit more physicality, because Mikal is more of a length and guard on the outside. Cam Johnson, another wing defender with his length. And I think, honestly, Torrey Craig didn't play much in this New Orleans series, but he was a great on-ball defender when he was in Denver before he came over to Phoenix, and he's just out of the rotation right now. I think you're going to see a lot more of Torrey Craig in this series just for versatility to go out there and give Luka something different.
I'm gonna say Justin's gonna kill me for this when we do ours.
You're doing 5, aren't you?
I'm gonna say it's a toss-up. Really? And I think it's a toss-up because of all the things we saw from Jalen Brunson and the others in games 1 and 2 without Luka. Right? Because what we've seen is obviously the Jazz are nowhere near the defensive talent that the Suns are. That's bar none. They're obviously not as well coached of a team as the Suns are because Monty Williams is the best coach in basketball. Like that is a fact. But I think up until this series, we've always had questions about could another guy step up and be that reliable second guy for a night if Luka's off or if Luka's getting clamped down. Like, that's going to be important, and I think they have that, whether it's Jalen Brunson, whether it's Dorian Finney-Smith, whether it's Bojan Bogdanovic, who had not Bogdanovic. What am I saying right now? Whether it's Spencer Dinwiddie, excuse me. Like, all of those guys, I think one of those guys can do that and step up. So, are the Suns going to commit to Luka? Of course they are. But the others, because of what they did in games 1 and 2, and even throughout the rest of the series once Luka got back, it's going to keep the Suns defense honest just a little bit, I think, where they're going to they're going to be cautious. Like, it's going to be similar situation, I think, to what Boston's going to do with Milwaukee. Like, yeah, they're going to send all these guys at Luka and force one of these other guys to beat you. But Jalen Brunson can beat you. we saw him do it. Like, Jalen Brunson can beat you. Spencer Dinwiddie can hit big shots in big moments. We saw him do that a couple times over the course of the backstretch of the season. Like Dorian Finney-Smith, he's not the best defender, but he's a solid defender. And they'll probably have him lined up on Devin Booker most likely to try to slow. Like, so I have the Suns moving on. Mm-hmm. I think that's the easy, like that's the no-brainer pick. The Suns are gonna move on, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Mavericks force it to 7 because I have the Suns winning in 6, but. Mm-hmm. The Mavericks are
winning on the road to close out, so that's always a toss-up.
That's true.
Too.
That's true. And the Mavericks are a fantastic home team. Like, granted, the Suns are a really solid road team. They closed out all of their series leading into the finals last year on the road. Like, they are a solid road team, but the Mavericks are a really good home team. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes a 3-3 split all the way down to game 7, and then that, game 7s can go anybody's way. But I do have the Suns moving on. I'm going to say it's a toss-up right now. Devin Booker, he's back, but
he did not look right last night.
He did not look right last night, and it's just tough. It's hamstring injuries are always crazy injuries because you can feel better, but with a hamstring, they can come back anytime.
One step, just one push off, and you feel that twinge, and you're done again.
Yeah,
and I think he rushed it last night. They really didn't need him.
They didn't need him.
They didn't need him.
I think he could have sat out the rest of the series and they would have been fine.
I think if it went to 7, he would have tried to play. I don't think he needed to play last night. I really didn't.
Yeah, I think
it's a grade 1. Like, that's a 2 to 3 week injury, and he pushed it back in a week.
Yeah.
So
that's was also factoring into it for me is Devin Booker didn't, and we saw Devin Booker played in the finals last year with that hamstring injury. And he didn't really look like Devin Booker for a majority of that series. So that I think is going to be a factor. I do still think the Suns can make it past because, I mean, Chris Paul, you talk about a playoff performer. That guy is insane. Let's get away from the Mavericks because we're not here for that. Let's talk about the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz, as currently constructed, I've said consistently have been the ultimate frontrunners in the NBA. They can win you 50 games in regular season, and then come postseason time, they just completely collapse. Do you think the Jazz can be legitimate title contenders in the Western Conference? I was not even talking about the NBA. Can they be contenders in the Western Conference as currently constructed?
No. Why? Because they can't stop a cold. They have nobody that can guard on the perimeter. Not a single one of them. And I was one that thought Utah would win the series, right? And I said Royce O'Neal had to be at least some glimpse of himself. And Royce O'Neal is arguably their best on-ball defender, and he was the one that was getting burnt time and time again. And it was so simple. And Quinn Snyder made no adjustments. I feel like he's had no answer. He had no idea because he doesn't have the personnel for this series, right? Mm-hmm. So as soon as there was a blow by, Gobert collapses, you swing it out, easiest shot in basketball, the corner three, bang. Or you even swing it one more time, over rotation, wide open three. They were so open all series. It's not like Dallas was making contested threes. I think there was a stat that I was reading, like it was like top 3, like most uncontested jump shots in the series was Dallas getting. They were just so open. And last night, they honestly were so tight to start that game. Utah needed to blow them out in that first half, and they didn't. They kept it within streaking distance because you could see Dallas was short on every open, and they were wide open, like wide open, like nobody within 5 feet open. Yeah. So and that was all series. Utah had no answers, and then as soon as you take Gobert out, you had nobody to help at the rim, and they were just getting to the rim because they had nobody. You can see Quinn Snyder actually tried something last night. He tried his zone, but you still couldn't do anything in that regard because they were still doubling Luca. I feel like, especially for them, you had to at least let Luca get his 50 and play everybody else and not collapse. I think that was the way that they needed to play it after, especially like those Game 5 getting routed in Game 5. Like last night, like they needed to just say, let Luca get his, and we shut down everybody else and not give them their open looks to get confident. But they got to blow it up. I think Gobert's got to be gone. You got to get rid of Gobert.
The Jazz, the Jazz. I have no nice things to say about the Utah Jazz.
Let it go, bro. Let it go.
I really don't. Like Donovan Mitchell, I love him. I think he's fantastic. I think he's a box office attraction.
He also didn't look right last night either.
He didn't look that good last night, but he had a decent series overall. He averaged like 20. He had like 26, 6 and 4, but he only hit 40% of his shots. He didn't play to that standard that he set back in the bubble, which I think has become the issue. Because if you set the standard, what you got to.
He did play great last postseason too.
He did, and he played phenomenally last postseason too. I don't really. This is not a team that can contend in the Western Conference. I've been saying that for forever. You, and it's not really a Donovan Mitchell issue. It's a coaching issue. I think it's a personnel issue. Rudy Gobert stinks. He's not an offensive threat. Nobody's afraid of Rudy Gobert down low offensively. And quite frankly, nobody's afraid of Rudy Gobert defensively. Like I watched Jalen Brunson cook Rudy Gobert last night on multiple different occasions. Like just had him in a blender. He looked confused, lost. Like I don't know what's going on there. So good for the Jazz for making it to the playoffs. But I mean, you have a guy.
But it's the issue with Utah is like it is the same. It has been the same issue for the past year, right? Like they lost to the Clippers without Kawhi, and they did the exact same thing
because they don't have
you kick open three. It was so easy, and in the regular season, nobody gives it like a full detailed overview in these games. It almost sometimes just turns into pickup, right? In these regular season games on the occasion, like they're not truly, unless like they're playing like one of the top tier teams. And at the end of the game, you start to see them try and test and tinker different things for a potential matchup. But like they didn't get it exploited. I think Joe Ingles actually getting hurt and then getting traded actually hurt them because he gives a little bit more versatility on that offensive end. And
it was 1,000%. I think Joe Ingles was the most important player on that team as far as production off the bench. He's a spark plug. You're down 15. You put Joe Ingles out there, suddenly you're up 5.
Yes, he's a microwave, man. He's a microwave from outside.
Ability. He doesn't need to have the ball in his hands. He's gonna find the open shot. He's gonna take smart shots. Like that was.
He was the smartest player on that team. He had the highest basketball IQ on that squad.
100%. Head scratching trade for sure. So you look at Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, right? that's been a lackluster duo, to say the least, as far as what they should be doing instead of what they are actually doing. We've seen a split recently of another guard big man duo in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, right? And in the beginning of that, we all thought that they should trade Joel Embiid and keep Ben Simmons because of Embiid's injury issues. Obviously, that hasn't been the case, and now Ben Simmons is gone. Is the split of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert inevitable? And if it is, would this duo be listed as better or worse than the Ben Simmons Joel Embiid duo in Philly?
Wow. So when I saw this topic and you sent it to me, I was just like, I was trying to really like comprehend and try and do a deeper dive on this. I think it's going to be inevitable. I don't think they really need to move on from Gobert if you're Utah, just because you need another dude, and Mitchell is the franchise. But if I was Donovan Mitchell, I'm throwing my jersey away. I'm saying, yo, get me the heck out. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, how I have to do everything and I can't even get any support, right? But I think the breakup will be inevitable. I would say it's worse than Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Why? I feel like Ben Simmons and Embiid really didn't even get to really play together other than that, year and a half truly of being a duo, because of Embiid being hurt half the time, then Simmons having this issue. But I think the only component is that you had, at least until Simmons got into the postseason and just laid an egg last year, you at least had two guys that could create their own shot. Even though if Ben Simmons wasn't going to shoot the jump shot, he was going to make the correct play. Like, Gobert is just a stand, rebound, and put back guy, or if he gets an alley-oop. Like, I was watching NBA on TNT, and Shaq was talking about it, and Charles Barkley was talking about it last night, right, in the postgame. They're like, he doesn't punish you. He's got to create some type of game inside. If it's a jump hook or if it's a pivot to go show right, go left, he's just got to show some move, right? Then he becomes a consistent scorer in the post if he just gets one move, because then he has the counter to it with the other side. I don't think a jump hook is in his game. I think he's being 7'2" actually makes him a little bit more flawed in that regard. But if he can just have a little shoulder fake or a shimmy and go one way, go the other way and have both hands just on the block, he would be such a better performer offensively. So I would say I would lean Simmons and Embiid is better off than Mitchell and Gobert, but it's all going to be dependent on Gobert and how much he really wants to work.
Okay, so I mean, I think Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid is definitely the better duo, because they did find playoff success. Like, they did win playoff series together. They did make runs at it. Rudy Gobert is a 3-time defensive player of the year, and you have to hide him defensively. I don't think we've ever had in the history of basketball the defensive player of the year that you have to hide on your defense. I don't hear the Bucks saying they need to hide Giannis defensively. The Warriors definitely don't hide Draymond defensively, and even if they do, Draymond ain't having it. Like, you never had to hide Michael Jordan defensively. I don't think you didn't have to hide Hakeem Olajuwon defensively. You're the defensive player of the year, and you're a liability on your defense. You cannot trust that Rudy Gobert can lock down the opposing team's big. We had talked earlier about that the Mavericks don't really have a big man. They've got Boban Marjanovic, who's the tallest player in the league, when I'm mistaken.
And he didn't even play really this series.
He didn't even play really. So you're telling me that Rudy Gobert could make a difference? You're telling me that Rudy Gobert, with the opportunities that he had, couldn't have exploited the lack of obstruction down low in the paint? Like, okay, he averaged what did he average? 14, 13 some odd boards a game? Yeah, okay, well, that's what he's going to do, because he
wasn't scoring.
He was
not scoring.
And I saw people on TikTok and Twitter and in some Reddit comments like, oh, well, Donovan Mitchell wasn't passing him the ball. Look, I wouldn't pass the ball either.
That's because they know he doesn't have a move. He has no move.
You look at Rudy Gobert overall in this series. Rudy Gobert averaged 33 minutes a game, and if we just round this stuff out, he averaged 12 points, 13 boards, a block. He shot 64% from the field. He shot 68% from the line.
That is not good enough to be a second superstar. You can't have it.
Game one, he had 5 points, 17 boards. I mean,
and they won that game.
And
Think about that. And they won that game.
Game 2, he had 8 points, 17 boards. Game 3, what did he do in Game 3? Game 3, he had 15 points and 7 boards. So his game high so far is 17 points in a playoff series. By the way, he gave us 17 points in game 4. So
with that's the game winner in Game 4 too.
So that's a nice add-on. Game 5 though, he still had 17 points, and
that game was over by halftime.
And in the clinching game, he gave us 10 points. What are we doing? He's not physical. He doesn't really have a post move. Like, okay, even if Rudy Gobert is only getting 5 shots a game, so what? Like, you're 7 feet tall, and the opposing team doesn't have a big man that is good defensively.
He should have averaged 18 points in this series. Minimum.
More physical. Like, you hit 4 free throws. He averaged 4 free throws a game this series. He's not a physical big. He's not a threat offensively. Nobody's afraid of Rudy Gobert when the ball is in when the ball is in his hands. He averaged 5 free throws made on 7.3 free throws attempted in the series. That's not reliable. Like Donovan Mitchell, as much as we oftentimes think and expect for the number one guy to do it all, he can't do it all. Like, no one's ever done it all and won a championship. I dare you to, because it's not 5-on-1, it's 5-on-5. No one in the history of basketball has ever done it all and won a championship. Even like you still need that guy. You still need that other guy to come off the bench and give you a little something. You still need that other guy to maybe, like Pat Bev, as annoying as he is, Pat Bev is reliable defensively because he's a professional pest. He's not a great defender, but he's going to get on your nerves and he's going to get in your head. That's attractive, even though he is really annoying. That's attractive on a basketball team to have a guy like that who can be a professional pest on the other team's best or second best or third best scorer, whatever it is. Like, Donovan Mitchell can't do it on his own, and he's had to do it on his own. And if you're gonna get rid of this one's a no-brainer. Like, I don't care if Donovan Mitchell is riddled with injury for the next 3 years, and I hope he's not. I'm not wishing that on him. But I don't care if Donovan Mitchell is riddled with injury for the next 3 years and he's in and out of the lineup. Rudy Gobert is still going to be the guy to go because he's Defensive Player of the Year that nobody is afraid of defensively, and he doesn't pose a threat offensively down low. That's not a winning recipe. Like, it's not. He is replaceable. He's extremely replaceable. You can find yourself another Rudy Gobert. Hard pressed to find another Donovan Mitchell.
And I think we are ripping Gobert, rightfully so, but Quinn Snyder, my guy. But Quinn Snyder, what are you doing? Like, I don't know if he was like just like had a hand behind, his hands were tied behind his back and he had to stick with his rotation, but I don't know. He literally made 0 adjustments. And it just isn't. I feel like Gobert being a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, he had that in his head that like Gobert can make an impact on the defensive end of the floor. And he just kept holding out. And these guys can't guard. You just can't guard. Offense wins games. Defense wins championships. And they can't. And Utah cannot play defense. You're gonna see a full blow up, I think, with their role players. I would not be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And for this series, I really had Mike Conley as the X factor. Mike Conley needed to be Memphis Mike Conley, and we know that's like a miracle for that to happen. And he was great for the first half last night, but then he was non-existent in that second half. Right? He had 8 assists by halftime. He had 0 the rest of the game. It just doesn't make any sense with this team that how poor that they are when they really need them to show up at the most important moments. They just can't do it. Like even on that wide open shot that Bogdanovic got at the end of the game, right?
Yeah.
To potentially win it. He never looked truly comfortable taking that shot. If you really watch that, he gets the ball fake and then he's like tense. He doesn't get the lift that he wants, and I knew he was missing it as soon as he tried to take the shot. You could just see it in his motion. His stroke looked completely different than it was all series long, and he was their second best player. So I think he's got to go because he can't guard. They need wing defenders. They really do. I think I think it's going to Gobert and Mitchell will stay because they're manhandled by the money aspect, right?
They are very difficult. By the money. Yeah.
They are going to be. It's going to be difficult to get anybody. Clarkson will stay because I think they need a microwave and somebody to come off of the bench. So, like, other than that, I wouldn't be surprised if they get 4 or 5 new pieces. Really,
it'll be hard pressed to find them without having
the issue is nobody wants to go to Salt Lake, right? Who wants to go to Salt Lake City? You have to acquire through trade.
The free agency market's not that sexy. You're going to have to give up pieces to get pieces back, and the pieces that you have are not really pieces that you can trade and kind of improve. You can get guys maybe that are younger or guys that do the same thing, maybe at a more reliable clip, but you're not going to improve from the pieces that you have because the pieces that you have, you'd have to move mountains. You'd have to throw in the pieces you have in picks. Utah doesn't have a lot of draft capital. So they're in a bind. They're in a bind.
I just have one. I think they really need to take a look at Toronto's model. Even though Toronto lost in the first round, they need to really see like athleticism can guard multiple positions defensively. Even if that means you have to go younger and cheaper. They need to go defense oriented because that's really what Utah was for a while, right? They were hard-nosed. You come play at altitude. You don't want to play them because they're going to get under your skin. And now these last couple of years, they become such an offensive firepower in the regular season that defense hasn't become that priority anymore. Like they need to go back to their roots under Sloan and take a real deep look. Like nobody really wanted to play them because they were physical.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. Are the Jazz going to be a playoff team next year?
Yes.
Sure. Not because they're good.
Bottom tier. They'll be a 6 through the 8. They'll be a 6 through 8.
You look at because the Suns are still going to be here. Obviously, so will the Warriors still be here, right? The Nuggets will still be here because they'll be getting Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. back.
It's only going to get more difficult.
And so will the Grizzlies. So those are your.
And Minnesota's up and coming. Minnesota's looked great. They just can't close out a game, but they've looked. They're high flying. They're fun to watch. Everyone's getting better, and Utah isn't. You know what I mean? That's going to be the issue. Dallas is still
going to be there. So you got those 5 teams that were already playoff teams, right? The Clippers are going to get Kawhi back and PG healthy. They're going to be there, right? The Spurs are only going to get better. The Pelicans are going to have really Zion good. Back. They should get rid of Zion. To be completely honest with you,
it's fair. It's a fair argument.
I don't think Zion being there is going to help them. It might actually hurt them. But I think with the ascension of Brandon Ingram that we've seen so far in the first round, and then also with CJ McCollum was doing, that's going to be a team that will at least be back in the play-in next season. The Lakers, according to LeBron James, if he's still there, they're not missing the playoffs ever again as long as he's.
They'll at least be in the play-in.
But they'll at least be hovering. So, the Jazz really need to figure it out, and we can't forget about the fact that the Portland Trailblazers are still going to be a team that could potentially hover around the play-in if Dame comes back, because Dame missed most of this season because of his abdominal surgery or back surgery, whichever one it was. Mm-hmm. So, and Damian Lillard has single-handedly willed this team into playoff positioning a lot. He had, your CJ McCollums and your Yuka Nurkic's and those guys as well. But that was Dame Lillard really willing this team into the playoffs, a team that doesn't have much depth, a team that is similarly built to the Utah Jazz. So it'll be interesting to see what the Jazz do. Something's going to have to give. It's going to be tough to figure out what that something is. Thank you for coming on the show, Blaine. I'm sure we're going to get a whole bunch of people in the comments of the clips of this show telling us that we're stupid, and that's fine.
And that's why we're still trending from a couple of videos that we did on my show a couple of years ago, a couple weeks ago.
So it's all good. Could you please tell everybody where to find you and what's up next for you?
Absolutely. So, where to find me. You can catch me on Instagram or on TikTok, thefinal.whistle. You can also see me on Facebook, Final Whistle Sports Pod, and always look it up on YouTube, the Final Whistle Sports Podcast. I'm out on almost every platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, Google Podcasts, Anchor. Anchor just put in a new thing that they're allowed to do videos. So you're going to start seeing videos on top of the podcast. So you're going to have 2 video platforms now with Anchor and YouTube. So be on the lookout for that. we're going to be doing an NBA and a little bit NFL draft recap that's coming up this week. If you guys haven't already, I had an interview with Dean Blandino last week. Great show. It was a pleasure to have him on. And he made me feel extremely dumb about sports, so that was fine. But I think he really gave interesting takes, especially on some of the controversial calls that happened throughout this NFL season, because he was a former leader official as well as overseeing replay. Like the Niners-Cowboys rule, like he really ripped into the Cowboys on that one. You need to really take a look at that, as well as the mishap that happened with Detroit and Justin Tucker leading to his game-winning field goal that is now at an NFL record. So he did a couple breakdowns on a couple things. It was pretty cool. Yeah. So it had a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on. I didn't do as many hot takes as I did last time because I almost got kicked off the show last time if you hadn't seen with how my outlandish takes, but we kept it pretty simple. This is pretty straightforward today, honestly.
It's pretty straightforward. It's hard to deviate from the blueprint. Please, if you guys haven't already, please check out the series recap we did with Peyton Doyle, the Peyton Doyle show. We talked about the Celtics and the Nets. He was also here for the Heat Hawks series. Please check out both those episodes. Also check out the Warriors episode with Spencer Fielding. We'll have more series recaps down the line. Justin will be on the show to talk about the Suns, and I don't need a Tylenol for that show. And we'll have someone else on the show. Sal will be on the show to talk about the Bucks and the Bulls, and hopefully we'll have someone very special on the show to talk about the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves. That's in the works. We'll see how it goes. I'll let you guys know when it happens, if it happens, how it happens. As always, thank you guys for watching. Follow at the links below: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at GTP Marcus. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, click the notification bell, leave a 5-star review. At some point, you'll get an episode about the Packers draft. It's just at some point.
Marcus needs to decompress about what has happened.
I got to do some decompressing. We're not going to stay too far on this because I don't want to get all upset and go to a Packers rant at the end of the show. So for Blaine Spencer, the Final Whistle Sports Pod, it's Marcus of the Go Talk Market signing off. Thank you guys for watching, and as always.